Hello everyone, this is a video for lesson 2.3. I don't think it'll be super long, but it is kind of an important one. So probably be the only one you'll get today. So let's get in the note-taking guide. Again, this is 2.3. Quickly, some of the definitions. Terms, we'll talk about those soon. Those are going to be the parts of an expression that are added together. Coefficient is going to be a number right in front of a variable, meaning that it's going to be multiplied by a variable. A constant term is a number that has no variable on it. And a like term are terms that have identical variable parts. Okay, so if that was fast and you don't have all of it, we'll go over those in a second. So let's take a look at identifying parts of an expression. So it says identify the terms, like terms, coefficient, and constant terms of the expression 5 minus 2x minus 3 plus x. Step 1, it says write the expression as a sum. So basically what that means is if we have 5 minus 2x minus 3 plus x, okay, you're going to change. The way I do it on paper is you change, anytime you change a minus to a plus, you change the sign on the next number. So these will both become plus negatives. This is already a plus, so you leave that. If it was minus a negative, then it would change to plus a positive. So this is the way I would write it. They write it like this over here. Eventually, you're not going to have to do that. You're going to notice what the terms are without doing that, and that's fine. If you need to always do this, that's fine, but because technically the definition of a term are the parts of an expression added together. So the terms are going to be 5, negative 2x, negative 3, and x. So they wrote those out right here. Those are the terms. Those are the parts that are added together. Okay. The next thing they ask for is the coefficients. So coefficients are the number in front of a variable. Okay. So we have a variable here, x, and we have a variable here, x. So this one's easy. Right in front of the x is a negative 2. So that's the first coefficient. When there's no number in front of a variable, it's like saying a 1, because 1 times something is always that something. So 1 times x is always x. So if there's just a variable, that coefficient is 1. So even though there's 4 terms, there's only 2 coefficients because there's only 2 of those terms that have a variable. Okay. The like terms, going back to up here, it says like terms are terms that have identical variable parts, meaning usually I would list the variable ones first. So this has an x and this has an x. Okay, so the negative 2x term and the x term are like terms. So this is one set of like terms. The 5 and the negative 3 are also like terms because they are what we're going to look at in a second here, called constants. They don't have any variable parts, so they are like terms because they're both without variable parts. And that is the definition of a constant term. So anything that you have that does not have a variable, that's your constant. So that's the fourth thing they were looking for. The constant terms are 5 and negative 3. Okay. So what I said before, you may not need to change it to plus and negatives. If you can look at this and see, the one term's 5. This minus is with the 2, so that's a negative 2x. So then the term is negative 2x and the coefficient's negative 2. This is a negative 3. Okay, so that term is a negative 3. And then there's the x. So let's take a look at a couple other problems here. So this one, let's do it without changing it first, then we'll look at it changing. So here we have 4y minus 6 plus 3y. So the first thing they ask for is terms. So there's three things here. 4y minus 6. So that term is a negative 6. So maybe I'll do it over here if we're doing it the other way. 4y, and if it was minus 6 plus 3y, then I would change this to plus a negative. Okay, so that's, either way you can look at it, but either way that term is a negative 6. Either if you see it here and you can distinguish and say, okay, that's a minus 6, or if you need to change it like that. The like terms, there's only one set of like terms. The 4y and the 3y each have a y on it. There's no matching term to the negative 6. That's the only one without a variable. So there's no like term there. Coefficients, the number in front of the variables, 4 and 3. And the constant term, the only one without a variable, is negative 6. Okay. Next one, 9 plus w minus 5 minus 8w. So the terms, you can just list them right in order. You have 9, you have a w, you have a minus 5 or a negative 5, and then you have a negative 8 terms. Again, if you need to write this, rewrite this with plus negative 5 plus negative 8w, you can. Like terms, there's two sets. The 9 and the negative 5 have no variables, so those are like terms. The w and the negative 8w are both a term with just a regular w, so those are like terms. Okay, so when you write those out, you know, put a semicolon in between them, write 9 and negative 5, w and negative 8w. Coefficients, those are, remember, the numbers in front of the variables. So w has no number, so that's like saying a 1. If it was a minus w, then it would be a negative 1. Okay, this says right in front of it minus 8, so that's the other coefficient. Constant terms, numbers without variables, so we have the 9 and the minus 5 or the negative 5. Okay, so those are just problems where you're just naming the parts. All right, next one, simplifying an expression. So they start out with this expression here. So it's 5m plus 8 minus 3m plus a negative 7. So these first two steps are kind of optional. Okay, and what I mean, and especially the third step, I never write out. But the first step, what they show here is, again, they change them to plus and negatives. If that's easier for you to add things up, plus negatives, do that. Okay, so this step is fine. Okay, now this step I really don't do. They use the commutative property, meaning they just change the order. So they put all the like terms close together. If that helps you, do that. Okay, this next step, they kind of do the reverse of the distributive property. I don't think you need to do this step. I think it's just a little confusing. I'll show you why. But let's say we're at this step right here. Okay, or even, and I'll show you before even there, but we're going to add like terms, meaning anything that's a like term you put together. So we have a 5m and a negative 3m. So 5 plus negative 3 is 2. That's where we get the 2m. Now you didn't have to necessarily reorder that. You could start right from the beginning and say, I'm just going to rewrite it over here to show you kind of what I would do. So right from the beginning, we have this. So you could just look at this and say, okay, this has an m, this has an m. This is 5m, this is negative 3m. If I put those together, 5 and negative 3 is 2m. And then if you wanted to, you could even cross that out, cross that out. And then you look, whether you reordered them like they did over here, then your constant terms are 8 and a minus 7. So 8 and a negative 7, that just adds up to be 1. Well, you can do that without rewriting it too. You can look at here and say, oh, these are both constants. There's no m on them. I have a plus 8 and a minus 7. That gives me a plus 1. There's my answer. Okay, so this example is just kind of showing the mathematical reasoning behind what you're doing, but you could go right from this step all the way to here, or if you like changing the plus and negatives, or plus the opposite. So if I make this a plus, make that a negative, plus negative, do that. Okay, but this is just showing what I did here. It's just showing you can go right from this to this. Okay, now when we get to the practice stuff, this is going to be one of the first assignments where I really suggest that you do some practice, and you probably want to get the extra credit done on this one because it's going to help a lot doing some practice on this. But anyways, let's look at example 3 next. There's a little more simplifying to do in these ones, and that's because there's a set of parentheses in there where we have to use the distributive property. Okay, so let's take a look here. If we go here, we have parentheses, and that means multiplication because the 3 is right next to the parentheses. So we can't start simplifying things yet. We can't look at what like terms are and start simplifying. We have to do this type of thing first. So we take the 3 times the x, we rewrite that as 3x. And we take the 3 times the 2, and we get a plus 6. Okay, now we can rewrite the rest. So negative x and a plus 9. Okay, so our kind of new, I'll just rewrite it over here, expression after the distributive property is this. Okay, now they rewrite it, they change the order and they group like terms. You don't have to do that. Okay, I could look at this now and say I got a 3x and I got another minus x over here. So 3, the coefficient of this would be like a negative 1. So I have a 3 and a negative 1. That gives me 2, and those were both x's. So I took care of that. I took care of that. Then I have a plus 6 and a plus 9. 6 and 9 is 15. Okay, and it works out the same way here. If you want to reorder it like that, do that. Okay, the next two are ones that could cause some issues, and the reason they could is because of this negative in front of the number that's in front of the variable. Okay, so let's take a look at this. We have 2k. We're just going to copy that down. That's not part of this multiplication. What you need to do here, you could change this to plus a negative. Okay, but think of this as a negative 5. Okay, and then you take that times k, so it gives you minus 5k. And you still have to think of that as a minus 5 when you multiply it by this one. So you think of that as a minus 5 times a plus 4, that becomes a minus 20. Okay, now we add like terms. We have a 2k and a minus 5k. Okay, so 2 and a minus 5 gives you a negative 3. Okay, so you add the like terms of the k's, and the negative 3 goes in front of the k. Now this constant term is by itself. There's no other constant, so you just keep it as a minus 20. Okay. What they do here, next one, it's the same type of problem except it just says minus and then parentheses 5a minus 7. What they do here is they basically say, it's just kind of like in front of a variable. If there's no number here, it's like saying a 1. So and eventually you might not need to rewrite this, but at the beginning you might have to. They rewrite 5a, and then they put a 1 here in front because there's no number here. So it's like saying a 1. And now they do their distributive property. So they say a minus 1 times a 5a is a negative 5a. Okay, because negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. Then they take the negative 1 times a negative 7. Okay, so think of this as a negative 1 times a negative 7 is a plus 7. Okay. Now we're going to combine like terms. Now what happens here usually doesn't happen, but they're showing you an example of where it does. Your like terms, you have a 5a and a minus 5a. They cancel out. Now they actually write 0 here. You wouldn't have to write 0, but they just show you, well, 5a and minus 5a, you know, it's just like saying 5 apples, take away 5 apples. You have nothing. So it's 0. And then you have the plus 7, so it all comes down to just 7. So even though you had variables to begin with, those variables are now gone. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at these 4 problems, and then we'll be done with the note-taking guide. So we have here, we look at this. Again, you could change this to plus and negative, but I'm just going to look at this. Find the like terms. Generally, you do the variables first, but you don't have to. But I have a 4y and a 3y. I add those together, I get 7y. So I'm crossing that out, that out. Those got me to 7y. Now this one's pretty easy. You have no like term left with the minus 6, so you just go minus 6. Okay. Next one. So I'll do it one way, and I'll show you, and it'll be the same answer as what they have, but it'll look different. So I'm just going to go in order. I have a 9 in the beginning. I'm going to find its like term. This is a W, not a like term. No W, so that's a like term. This has a W, so it's not a like term. So I have 9 and a minus 5. So 9 minus 5 is 4. So I've taken care of that, and I've taken care of that. Now I have a W and a minus 8W. So again, this is like 1. Okay, so 1 and a minus 8. If you have to use your calculator, you can, but hopefully you know that's a minus 7, and they're both W's. Okay, and that's my answer. Now, both theirs looks different. They are both correct. Okay, generally in algebra, they're going to put things with variables in the front. Okay, so they're just switching the order. But if you look, the constant is a positive 4, so plus 4, and it's just a 4. And the variable is a minus 7. So minus 7W, negative 7W. These two answers are the same. Okay. All right. Number 5 has a little more work to do. So we got to use distributive property because there's a parentheses. So 4 times x is just 4x. Then we go 4 times a minus 1 is minus 4. Then we copy the rest down because it doesn't have anything to do with the parentheses. Okay. Now we look at the like terms. We have a 4x and a minus 2x. So 4 minus 2 gives you the 2. So I could cross both those out, or just move on. Look at your constants. It's a negative 4 and a negative 7, or a minus 4 minus 7. Put those together, that's a minus 11. Okay, so if you're still struggling with adding positive and negative numbers, you could use your calculator and write, 4 negative and then minus 7. It'll give you a negative 11. So then it's minus 11. If you're needing help with that in the calculators and stuff, let me know. Last one here, again, we have parentheses, so we have to go negative 6 times k. So negative 6k, then negative 6 times 3 gives us a minus 18. And then outside the parentheses, we have a plus 5k. Okay, so it looks like that. Now combine like terms, we have a negative 6k and a plus 5k. That's negative 1k. Now you could actually write out negative 1k, and that would be okay. Books are not going to write the 1 there. They're just going to say negative k. And then you have the extra constant of just a minus 18. So again, both of these would be right. I'm not going to mark that wrong if you put the negative 1 in there. Okay. All right, so if we go to the study guide, again, this is one of those ones where at minimum, I would do the problems in the study guide. Okay, that's not a lot of problems, and if you're getting this, then you're doing pretty good. And you could send me the picture of it, and you might have to do it on a separate sheet of paper because there's not a lot of room on here. But this is the 2-3 study guide. could give you some extra credit for this. Okay, so at minimum, I would say practice this study guide. Okay, there's not a lot of problems. If you're understanding this, the test should be okay. All right, so you have some problems here where you're just naming the terms, like terms, coefficients, and constants. Some simplifying without distributive property, without the parentheses. So it's just 3 of those. Okay. Then they have an example here, again, of with parentheses in here. So this would be great. You know, if you're only doing 3 problems, but understanding them, you're going to be pretty good there. Okay. And then we'll go over this word problem quick. One thing, if the word problems start being hard and stuff, don't stress out about it. Most of your test is not going to be word problems. Get the things right you can get right. Just because some things are hard doesn't mean don't do the other things. Okay, if you do the stuff you're capable of doing in this class, you're going to be fine. Okay, I think a lot of people could do this one, but if you try and get it wrong, no big deal. But let's take a look at it just so you know maybe there's a problem or two on the test that's a word problem. So it says you spend a total of 50 minutes talking long distance to your friend and grandparents. It costs 4 cents per minute to call your friends and 6 cents per minute to call your grandparents. I'm not sure why that would be, but this is a little older stuff. So it says let T be the time you talk to your friend in minutes. Write an expression in terms of T for the cost of both phone calls. Okay. And then find the cost of the phone calls if you talk with your friend for 25 minutes. So this gets a little confusing. So if you don't follow along with this one right away, that's okay. They kind of set it up here. But T stands for the length of a call with your friend. So the first part is a little easier. It says 4 cents per minute for calling your friend. So you go 4 cents, and that's how you write 4 cents, 0.04, times the length of time you're calling your friend. Okay. Now, how much it's going to cost to call your grandparents is a little more tricky. It says it's 6 cents per minute. So that's where they get this 0.06. The time, we can't just use T because T was the time you were calling your friends. And we can't use another variable because then we won't be able to solve for it. Okay. But if we know we talk 50 minutes total, okay, let's say we talk to our friends for 20 minutes. That means we talked to our grandparents for 30. And the way we got that is we took the 50 minus whatever we talked to our friends. Okay, so if I said we talked to 20 minutes to our friends, we would take 50 minus 20 and you get 30. So that's the amount of time that you're talking to your grandparents. So now what the reason they're just going over this is to simplify this. You have to use distributive property. So they go 0.06 times 50, which is 3. Okay. And then we get 0.06 times a minus T would be a minus 0.06 T. Now again, this problem might be confusing. Just watch it, take your time, see if you can watch it back and understand it. But now we combine like terms. This is the most confusing part of the problem, is why this is 50 minus T. But again, it's because the time we talk to our grandparents is 50 minus whatever we talk to our friends, and T is what we talk to our friends. So anyways, combine like terms. Now here they put the 3 first. It doesn't have to be. If you combine it like terms, you have 0.04 T and a minus 0.06 T. So technically you could say that's negative 0.02 T, and then you'd have that constant 3. This and this are the same thing. The T is a minus 0.02 in both spots, and then the constant is a positive 3 in both spots. Okay, and then they asked the last part, evaluate the expression if you talk to your friend for 25 minutes. Well, if you have the equation, this is the easy part. T is the time you talk to your friends. Now you just put 25 in for T. Okay, so if you put 25 in for T, order operation says you have to multiply these two things first. And if you multiply that, that's 50 cents. So 3 minus 50 cents is $2.50. So again, I just went over that. You could try number 10 and see if you get it. But the study guide is, I would say, is the best thing you can do to make sure you're understanding this stuff. Also, if you could do all or half of this practice, that's only going to help. Okay. I understand it takes time and there's a lot of problems here, but even if you do half of it, you'll get some points. Okay. You know, and if you have questions, ask. If something like this is going to be on the test, you'll see it on the reviews, and then you can always go back and look at this. But you know, this would be a good one to do all or some of this for extra credit. There's only going to be one video today, I believe, and so you can take your time and do this stuff. So after you watch this, make sure you send me a chat message saying you watched it, and then I would at least practice a study guide here. So if you have any questions, let me know. I can either talk personally with you or I can make a new video over a problem, something like that. All right.